Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic show. It's episode 540. We've got a great guest here. We've got Reynolds of Zibtek, I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm sure you'll correct me. We haven't got my co-host, Stephen. He's had to go and deal with a major business emergency, but he will be back next week. That's if he's dealt with his emergency. I think he's probably up to it, isn't he, listeners and viewers? So, Ian, would you like to give us a quick 30-second intro about yourself and your company?
Yeah, great. And great to be here. Thanks for having me. My background is very much help with startups for a long period of time or a short period of time, help launch and get different products to market. Went into traditional consulting role after getting the MBA, did that for 4 or 5 years. I had the opportunity to work on both that sort of enterprise software side and then ultimately on the transactional finance side, and did several billion in transactions. It was a lot of fun, felt like I saw everything, and wanted to get back into software. And so 2017 had the opportunity to acquire half of Zibtek and continue to improve upon the 10 years of growth that the company has had. And so we've sort of professionalized certain components of what we're doing, and we're spending much more money on R&D and training. And our company, like so many others in the software development arena, serves other firms that don't necessarily have a engineering team in-house, or they don't have enough bandwidth or a technical capability in-house. We're about 100 employees, about 50 contractors on top of that. And we've served clients all the way from Google and Adobe to really small startups where somebody has an idea. Literally, we've had people present us sort of napkin ideas that we've turned into fully blown products. So, wow. In a nutshell, we are a full service software development firm. We just do software engineering. We really don't do anything else.
That's great. Right, so in this, we're going to be discussing what Ian sees as the hottest technologies, which technologies he thinks they're going to have a consistent growing demand over the next year, 18 months. Then we're going to also discuss his experiences of dealing with non-technical founders, what you should know about if you engage a company as a founder, or if you're a developer and you're needing the assistance of a company like Ian's. Should be a fantastic discussion. But before we go into the main part, I want to talk about one of our main sponsors, and that's Kinster Hosting. Kinster's been sponsoring the show now for over 2 years now. They're a great premium WordPress hosting specialist. If you've got a WooCommerce website, if you've got a learning management system website, course-based website, you're going to need better hosting than your average hosting provider. These are more like applications than websites, and they need more power, more assistance, more knowledge. And that's what you get from Kinster. So if that sounds interesting, go over to Kinster, have a look at their plans. I suggest you should buy one for yourself or for your clients. And the main thing is, when you do buy, is please tell them that you heard about them on the WP-Tonic show. So Ian, so let's start off with what are some of the technologies that have come up in the last couple of years or the last year that you think there's still that get you excited, and also you think there's a lot of growth in the next year and 18 months around them?
Right. I think actually the thing that's going to continue quite aggressively is the use of really sophisticated JavaScript on the front end through a JavaScript framework like Angular or React. And there are a ton of websites that are really simple HTML, CSS that you use for many things. Shopping, let's say you're updating your phone bill, you're updating these things. A lot of these technologies, especially for these enterprise firms, haven't really moved yet into making use of sort of these frameworks, these JavaScript frameworks. And the changes are going to be small and incremental, but if you consider in aggregate what those changes are going to do to your engineering landscape and to what your interactions are going to be with most everyday websites, it's actually going to be a pretty crazy performance increase insofar as you're going to have a lot of things that are going to be what are called modularized, right? So where I'm only loading a certain component of the website or only loading a certain component of the application to get refresh data rather than reload the whole application or whole web page and get that information that is updated served back to me. So I think we're going to see greater adoption of those technologies. The web is just so expansive that it takes a long time to sort of sleuth things through the pipes, so to speak. But there's been no, even through the downturn, there has been no let up in demand for sort of migration to these types of tools.
Right, and that's interesting that you touched that, because that's been for the past couple of years, that's been an ongoing theme in the WordPress world, because the main team behind WordPress, which is Automatic, and its founder Matt Moag, he's publicly, and he's been pushing through the page builder, which is Gutenberg, is that a lot more of WordPress is going to be based on React and a lot less on traditional PHP. So of these frameworks, you mentioned a couple. What are some of the strengths and weaknesses of some of these frameworks based on your experience, Ian?
Yeah, so broadly speaking, there's kind of three big JavaScript frameworks. All right, so let's go through each of those. So there's React, like you mentioned, there's Angular, and then there is Vue.js. So Angular is put out by Google, and the structural advantage to Angular is that it is sort of an opinionated framework. There's kind of a right way and a wrong way to do things. There's a little bit more structure that's required and kind of pushed by Google in terms of how they want you to broadly construct your Angular application. It is actually a little bit slower than some of the other technologies. It's not as heavy-handed. And it initially came out as sort of a design framework, and then people started using it for much heavier lifting. And so you have that Angular 1, and then Google quickly realized, like, oh, we got to rewrite this thing and put out Angular 2. So there's radically different versions between everything after Angular 2, or sorry, everything after Angular 1 and Angular 1. So there's still a lot of applications actually on Angular 1 because it's really, really popular when it came out. But Angular 2 is really kind of more in line with what the traditional framework is. That's Angular, and it's not going anywhere. Google's not going anywhere, and it would be appropriate technology to use. But again, there's kind of a more formal structure, and it's typically used in bigger applications. Then there's React, which is actually more popular than Angular. React is put out by Facebook, and as you said, WordPress is going to make use of it. And structurally, one of the advantages of React is it's more appropriate for things like WordPress, where maybe you have a couple pages here and there. It's much faster, actually, on a performance basis than Angular, but it is not as opinionated, meaning there's many ways to skin the proverbial cat, and there's not really a right way, so to speak, to use things. And the result is that you have kind of many flavors and kind of many approaches to solving the same problem. If you have a much larger technology, you have to kind of internally, so to speak, write the rules for how you're going to do things, so everybody's on the same page and you're not fighting over each other. But really, they'd be React and Angular would be comparable and would be appropriate for any large-scale application. Then there is Vue.js. Vue.js was started by an engineer who either formerly worked for either Facebook or Google, or
it's got very, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's I don't know too much about it, so I'm really interested to see what you're going to say about it. But I was going to say that there's some really big names in the WordPress community that are respected that were really pushing that library, and they really liked it. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no. You're right. And so one last thing about React is that React, again, is a little bit faster, and it's especially so for sort of simple, very simple websites. And I think that's why you see so much more adoption, because it is just better and quicker for really, really simple websites. So you're going to see sort of disproportionate adoption in terms of it's going to be React, then Angular, then Vue. Vue has a very loyal base. It's open source, and it's an independent person that is a group that is sort of supporting and maintaining that, as opposed to a large entity like Google and Facebook, and it has a lot of advantages. I would say the biggest disadvantage you have of Vue is that total user adoption of Vue is very small relative to Angular or React. It's just a tenth, or say, I don't know if that's an accurate statistic, but it seems about a tenth of the adoption of each one of those relative technologies. So while the community is very involved, and it's very, very sort of stylistically can be used for a lot of visual clean applications. It's very lightweight. Just from a simple adoption standpoint, there's not as many people using it, and so it may be harder to find certain libraries and certain things like that. But it's a very simple, very practical, structural way of using JavaScript on the front end.
Now, over the past 5 years, or longer, really, time flies, really, doesn't, especially in the technology area. We had this constant battle between, do I need an app that works on OS and Android, or do I invest more in the website? I'm talking about medium to larger companies. I sense that I think the app was the in thing for a few years. We must have an app. We must. I sense over the past 18 months, 2 years, that's dying down to some extent. And the love affair with apps has died a bit, and people are refocusing on their web properties and the web in general. Am I talking a load of rubbish, or would you agree there?
No, I'd agree with you. So I think you're right. There's a bit of market saturation in terms of apps, right? So there's 4 or 5 million apps on the App Store, or something silly number. So getting visibility in terms of your application relative to your competition, it's not a way to get any sort of marketing lead anymore. Whereas several years ago, because there weren't as many applications, I could basically put out an app and get a little more visibility to my company and these sorts of things. People assumed that there was this new practical use case for things, whereas not necessarily true. So now there are technologies like progressive web applications where I can build a web app and make it so it's downloadable on my phone without even going through the App Store, and effectively get all of the features that I would have by downloading the app through the App Store if I just visit the website on my mobile device via the browser. So it's not as necessary to build a core app, I think, for most companies, and have that on their site. Now, that being said, I do think that there are still apps that are coming to market. I know for a fact, as a result of what my company does, that there's still apps coming to market that are really intuitive. They add a tremendous amount of value. They are very much sort of groundbreaking and revolutionary in what they're doing. But I would say that the fever pitch, so to speak, for apps has died down a little bit, right? So oftentimes when we're building something new, we're building a core web application, and then we are pairing that with a mobile app. And the mobile app is typically the second or third consideration in what it is that we're building. And I would say, generally speaking, too, that because of some of the frameworks that you're able to use when building a web application, you're able to build something that lets you have it be pretty mobile responsive out of the gate.
Yeah, that's. I'm enjoying this conversation. We're having a real tech feast here. Something else that before, let's ask this question and then we go for a break. It's amazing the time goes quick. I've also been aware, it's always been really important, but I sense in my own consciousness and dealing with clients, we specialize in helping entrepreneurs and large organizations with online training and building learning management systems. That's our speciality. But I've noticed that UX design has become more and more important. It's something, and in some ways WordPress, the actual back-end interface and how it integrates with major plugins. There's murmurings, and I have a lot of contacts with a lot of plugin developers, and they're very dissatisfied with the UX or how it's become a bit old-fashioned. What's your own feelings about UX design? How important is it in the bigger picture, basically?
Yeah, I think that there's a bit of a problem with UI UX in that it is often an afterthought, whereas it should be, in many respects, sort of the first thing that you think about. Because if I am designing something, so here I'll give you an example. We have a client who's got a old application built in the 80s, and they need to rewrite it, and it has, say, something like 4,000 screens, 4 or 5,000 screens in this application. It's huge, and
Wow.
the reality is that if we were going to rewrite that, we could probably get it down to less than a couple hundred with proper UI UX, because you're not reloading every single component of the application or going to 100% a new screen. It's just reloading an element of that screen, and they want to just start doing engineering immediately. And we're saying, well, we've got to know what we're building first. Otherwise, we're going to be changing things, and that those changes are going to add to the time. They're going to add to the cost. And then we are not going to be able to accomplish your objectives of rebuilding this thing, keeping your capital preserved, and being efficient. And so I think that there is a tendency to just sort of push UI, UX off to the side, not think about it. But at the end of the day, what you're building is actually a device that's going to interface with human beings. And so you have to think about the design piece first in many respects.
Yeah, it's the same thing with usability. It's still frustrating that they are in the WordPress world. They ain't tools that can help more effectively with usability at an earlier stage. It's still, and actually using React, a lot of because I'm no longer a front end developer. I'm just the principal of the agency, but I don't actually develop anymore. But I know a lot of people are very frustrated because actually WordPress going down the React, they feel has made, and going down Gutenberg, which is the front end of this movement going down the React, has made usability even worse.
Mm-hmm.
Is usability, because obviously you're dealing with medium to large companies, does the question of usability also come up, for people that are suffering from visual and other disabilities? Obviously you're also facing an older population. But I'm going to leave that question in your mind, and we're going to go for our break, and we'll be back in a few moments. See you soon, folks.
Perfect.
We're coming back. We've had a feast of geekiness. Ian seems up to it. He's not shocked by any of my ridiculously broad questions yet. I'm sorry, Ian, I'm notorious for it. That's why I have a co-host to keep me under control. But unfortunately, he's done a runner. No, he's actually dealing with an urgent problem. So before you answer my question in the first half, I want to mention one of our other great sponsors, and that's Groundhog. Now, if you're looking for a native CRM system, that's something that does something like Active Campaign or Drip. There's a lot of external SaaS-based CRMs out there, but you're looking for a native solution, which definitely has strengths and benefits. There wasn't much to choose from, and then Groundhog came on the scene over a year ago, and obviously the founder of Groundhog, Adrian, has been a co-host of mine, but unfortunately he had to leave because he's been busy upgrading his own platform. But it's a superb product. Now, I suggest that you should really look at it because there's substantial savings, monthly savings for yourself or for your clients by going to a native solution. So go over to Groundhog, have a look at what they've got to offer. I suggest that you should buy one of their packages to try it out yourself or buy it for your clients. And the main thing is tell them that you heard about Groundhog on the WP-Tonic show. So, Ian, I gave you a massive question before the break. Would you like to delve into that?
Yeah, let's jump in. So the question was broadly, what do you do if you're a large application where you need to move towards a technology, and then you're harming the user experience or the usability of the application? I think in WordPress's case, the technology's been around forever. I saw some statistic where WordPress accounts for anywhere from 60 to 70% of the web, and it makes sense. It's a powerful user interface, powerful CMS. We've done work in WordPress, and we've used it. We understand the value it can bring, especially out of the box. And the challenge they face is that, as I stated previously, that some of these technologies are so powerful and so efficient, and ultimately a much better user experience, that they have so many customers using WordPress that they couldn't just sort of rip the pull cord on the parachute, so to speak, and switch everybody over, because it would just break too many things. So likely they are forced into small incremental changes that they have to push onto the user base, which create lots of pain at a large scale over a small period of time. And they can't just, as I said, sort of pull the ripcord. So I think that those changes are going to come. The challenge I think that folks at WordPress have is how to go faster as it relates to implementing those changes.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Ian. Very insightful.
Yeah, right. How do we do this quickly and rip the Band-Aid off, so to speak? And then for companies using WordPress, it really is, okay, well, how do I understand that these changes are coming? And then structure as I sort of planned the redevelopment and adjustments to my website, my marketing efforts, knowing these changes are coming, so I'm not too far ahead of the curve or too far behind it. And for the simple answer in our business is, in most cases, people are just rewriting things from scratch because it's faster to just rewrite fully and then just migrate all the users over and just say, we're going to do some training. Here you go. Because of the performance differences you're going to get between legacy software versus what you get out of some of these new applications. But I think for most people, especially folks using WordPress and these things, I don't know that they're going to have that luxury of just doing a full rewrite and going to one of these other web applications.
Well, there were some big voices in the WordPress community that were saying that's what should be done. It was the opportunity to rewrite the database, how that was structured, do a really fundamental overall modernization of the whole platform, and take that opportunity and break backward compatibility, saying that you're going to support the old system and give a roadmap, but saying that this is the new system. And other open source website development platforms have chosen that path. Like I think Drupal have chosen that, and maybe Expression Engine to some extent, which isn't it's a hybrid, isn't it? So hopefully you're going to stay on for some bonus content. Then we can go back to the technical feast that we've just had. But let's move on to your experiences of working with decision makers that don't have the kind of technical knowledge that you so clearly ever shown in your answering of my very vague questions. So what are some of your experiences and some of the tips and insights that you might be able to give to the listeners and viewers?
Yeah, I think the vast majority of companies going forward that are going to get created are going to be tech-enabled companies, meaning they're going to have some component of technology, be it your website, be it an online store, be it maybe a mobile app or something to that effect. And we run into a lot of people who, for obvious reasons, they have skill sets elsewhere, and they double, triple down on those skill sets, but they do need to make use of technology to help their business be better. And the problem that I think a lot of entrepreneurs face, a lot of business owners face, is that they need to make sure that they're not getting ripped off, or they're not going to get in trouble, or something is not going to break and they're not going to be able to figure out who they know to, or be able to pull a resource to fix things. And this simple analogy that we use internally, because the technology landscape is huge. I mean, we have, again, 150 people that are basically on staff, and we don't know everything. I mean, we know a lot of stuff, but we don't know everything. And the way we solve for that is we take a really simple approach where we say, well, what is the biggest and best technology. Okay, well, for CMS, it's WordPress, right? Hands down. Okay, well, what is the biggest and best technology in this other thing? What is not going to go away? What is not going to change?
Mm.
So we encourage business owners to get familiar with the large technologies and just put aside some of these things on the periphery, because ultimately what you need as a business owner is stability. What you need is not things that are necessarily going to be rapidly changed unless you're trying to innovate. You're really focused on things that are going to work for you over a long period of time. And we just push this idea of like, look, when you're building software, when you're buying software, think like you're acquiring a fleet of Toyotas. You need to put 300,000 miles on those cars. You need to be able to take them to any mechanic. You need to be able to make sure that you don't have specialist parts. You got to wait if the factory in Germany goes down. You don't have to replace that auxiliary fan that's going to cost you $800. You need to be nimble. And now that doesn't apply to 100% of every case, but taking that sort of thinking, taking this sort of mentality, and then applying it to your software acquisition, your software development processes, ultimately results in a solution that's a little bit more maintainable and not so hard to get your arms around as a business owner.
Yeah, it's the yeah, I totally agree with you. It's a balancing, just don't go with the most popular next great thing, and just kind of always be moving and changing. You want a more stable attitude about this and a plan. So do you kind of do a lot of white label work? Because basically the people that listening to this podcast, they're either freelancers, agency owners, marketing professionals. We have a very diverse and growing, I like to say, growing audience, where our audience figures have grown quite substantially recently. So do you do any kind of white labeling work with people?
We do. We have folks who come to us and they have a core application or a core app, or they're providing maybe services on behalf of someone else, and they need us to back end them because they need a deeper team, a bigger team, and we sort of serve as their team. So we've done that for actually a number of enterprise firms as well, where in many cases where you think you're talking to some very large Fortune 500s, you're actually talking to us as it relates to some of these technical solutions, and that's structurally sort of who we are. We like solving very, very complex challenges and making them simple, and that's really sort of our bread and butter.
That's fantastic. So what's the best way to learn more about you and the company, really? And hopefully you're going to stay on for some bonus content, maybe 10, 15 minutes, because I like to go back into our techie dive that we had in the first half.
You bet. So the best way to get a hold of us, just go to zibtek.com and check out our about page, check out our process page, see how we work and see how we think about delivering solutions for our clients. We have a ton of free content on our blog that's very in-depth, very, very thoughtful, gets thousands of views, et cetera, on a daily basis. And then if you want to reach out, hello@zibtek.com is probably the best way to reach me, and I respond to those. And that's there's also always our contact form if you want to speak to sales.
That's great. Well, thanks, Ian. It's the half hour just kind of blew away, didn't it? He's going to stay on for some bonus content. You'll be able to see the whole interview plus the bonus content on our YouTube channel, which is WP-Tonic. So go over to YouTube and subscribe to that. There's a number of tutorials, interviews with experts like Ian on the channel, so subscribe to that. If you also really want to support the show, give us a review on iTunes. It's a little bit painful to do it, but it does really help the show, and it helps me get fantastic guests like Ian on the show, which I've enjoyed the discussion so far. There's nothing like a good technology feast. We'll be back next week with my co-host, hopefully, and another great expert like Ian. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye. All right, on to bonus content. So what's my next question? I had one lined up. I just kind of, how do you see, especially, you know, the pandemic and the virus, it's really affected companies. I don't think, obviously, things are going to return to some extent to normal, whatever that is. But in some ways, things are never going to be the same. So I see in the educational sector, which we specialise in, the disruption that this pandemic has caused, I think will continue, and it's industry, i.e. higher education and internal training, that was looking for disruption. So how do you think, so I see a lot of the workforce outside higher education at not returning to their offices or working much more from home. How do you think this is going to affect technology in the next couple of years?
I think let's use the example of Zoom versus Skype. So Skype has been around forever, right? But then all of a sudden, with current events, you have Zoom taking off and being incredibly, incredibly popular. Now, why is that? And I think one of the reasons for that is right time, right place. But I think it's also the simplicity of the tool. It's actually easier for me to use Zoom and have a sort of professional business meeting than it is for me to have Skype. I just drop a link and then a bunch of people can join that link.
Well, just I don't want to be a total fanboy of Zoom, but you've got to say, you've got to be impressed that their network, you know, they had a couple there. There was a couple of glitches, but I haven't heard people say it just all collapsed. Their the amount of usage that it just must have skyrocketed. But you've got to be impressed with the infrastructure and how they dealt with it, haven't you?
Right, right. And that's exactly right. From an infrastructure standpoint, I've got the high quality calls. There's a number of elements that sort of went into that, and so I think you're going to see these technologies where they have been designed to be simple. They have been designed to take less clicks, right? So Amazon has it patented so that they have the kind of one-click checkout type structure, and you're going to see more of that, or more of that effort to simplicity and the reduction to simplicity across more of the applications that we use. And I think what you're going to have happen is a much tighter. I mean, everybody's already attached to their phone. I mean, it's like if you leave your phone away for a little bit, you have like phantom limb syndrome, like, oh, I'm missing this thing, right? And you're going to find that you're going to have a clearer interface between work and sort of where you are at all times type connectivity. I think for some people that's going to be hard to deal with, and it's going to be, you can't separate work and play, so to speak. But I think in general, you're going to see a tighter cohesion like we haven't seen before, where the world is just more connected.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I've always think a hybrid system, because in the WordPress world, freelancers, they've had centers which they could utilize, that had conference rooms. Moving around is more acceptable. I don't know if you're a distributed company yourself, or are you a hybrid? Do you have a central office and then all the rest of you distributed? Is that?
We have, so yes, and so we have folks in, say, three primary offices, but we also have people who are distributed. Yeah. So that's structurally how we're laid out. Now, when the event broke out, we pretty early on just said, okay, we're just going to give everybody in the company a like a little was it Wi-Fi device, because we don't know what's going to happen, and if you've guys got to you got to move or what have you, we are going to just get you a device. And so we ordered those immediately, sent those out to people, and we had basically no interruption in terms of our ability to deliver. Obviously, if we have access to the internet, we can do our job. So structurally for us, we had people remote for a very long time. We have people coming back to the offices now, but still have a number of people remote, and we dealt with it that way.
Yeah, fantastic answer. Something I've been thinking about quite a lot, and I haven't put this to anybody yet, but I've been so impressed with your answers because I've thrown a lot of stuff at you during this conversation. I've thrown everything at you. I'm notorious for this, but you've dealt with it so easily. So I've been very impressed, Ian. Because I do know I do throw a lot of questions. But something I've been really thinking about is the struggle between WordPress and the SaaS army, as I call it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like in the learning to set up a membership site and user experience and make money from it, there's about 3 to 4 major SaaS players. There's a lot more than that,
Mm-hmm.
but there's about 3 to 4 major Kajabi, Teachable, Learnable, and then you have WordPress that has a couple of leading plugins, which is LearnDash and Lifter LMS are the 2 main WordPress plugin solutions that go on top of WordPress. And that's what we specialize in, the building and support of those particular 2 plugins. We will use other plugin LMS solutions, but they're the 2 leaders with a substantial, they've both been on the market for about 6 years and got a very good reputation, and they're adding more and more functionality. But it's basically, you got the kind of Swiss Army knife, which a lot like, let's say Kajabi. Kajabi says, you know, we provide transactional email, we provide marketing email, we provide a funnel system. We provide something like Active Campaign does in one box. And it's really, really simple. Well, it isn't really, really simple. You still got a lot of parts. The web interface obviously is more integrated because it's one company, but it's still a Swiss Army knife. And then you got WordPress, that's got a more diverse interface, and you've got these various modules, and the modules are the plugin. You got the core, and then, but the plugin has the strength that it has a precise function. It has a team of people that just focus to be the most best product, what that plugin does in its world of competition. So like with a learning management system, Lifter LMS is in major competition with LearnDash. What do you know, and there's always a kind of conflict. Should you go with a platform like WordPress that has these module solutions, or should you go for a Swiss Army knife solution that reportedly is easier to set up? And that what's your own thoughts about that, or do you think I've just spent 3 minutes just waffling? Yeah.
No, I think that's a important question. So, you know, these tools like Kajabi and you know, we're sort of aware of this. We used to do a lot of work in Moodle back in the day, which is another sort of structure or PHP structure for doing these sort of LMS platforms. And, you know, I'll say that the tools are specialized. They give you a lot of stuff out of the box, but it's a double-edged sword, right? Because I have to set that up. But if I'm going to expand my services or delivery beyond what those tools can provide, I can't do it at all. So most businesses have several streams of revenue, and most businesses have several structural ways to provide and sell and market their services. And those tools, while very good at their sort of specialized vertical, the only way for those companies to grow and provide more services is to just kind of add additional tools into the toolkit, but then they're fundamentally going to have to spin up another vertical to let you use their tool. Whereas with WordPress and some of these other tools, while I have to build some of those integrations, use plugins, use some of these other tools, I'm fundamentally not limited with what it is that I can do. So, you know, we as a company had to we were on WordPress. We were actually on HubSpot's CMS for a little bit, but then we were on WordPress. Now we're on something custom that we wrote, and we're testing some other stuff. And the problem we had with a fixed platform was that our needs evolved over time. And we couldn't meet our needs with a fixed platform. In our case, actually, we probably could have done it with WordPress and built onto it, but we chose to go with another platform because we also wanted to showcase some of our skill as it relates to certain some of our engineering things.
Yeah, I understand.
But that being said, no matter what you do, if you go with a stable platform like a Kajabi or a Teachable or what have you, it's a double-edged sword, because you will get to a point where you're going to have things that you're going to need to do where you're going to have to extend beyond that platform, and you just can't do it. If you need a specialized page that has like a calculator built in or something else like that, you're just not going to be able to do it with those tools.
Because I did a YouTube video where I looked at Kajabi and I tried to keep reasonably a balance. Obviously, I'm committed to WordPress, and I looked at it, and the onboarding experience, I had to give them top marks. It was very integrated, very polished, but it was still complicated, especially, and I was trying to put myself, what if I didn't have any knowledge? I was just somebody that wanted to share my knowledge, and I wanted to it was still complicated getting all these bits, and you still have to spend a lot of time with the help files and the videos, and probably spending a good month really delving deep into it, and then making quite a few mistakes. And the WordPress would be more complicated because you've got to set up the hosting and some other bits. But I didn't think there was quite the difference as Kajabi was making out. But I suppose that's always good marketing, isn't it? Right. So I think that was excellent. But it has been on my mind, I think some of it is also around what we previously discussed in the podcast part of the show, is that I feel that with WordPress, they tried to get a unified interface by encouraging, or a bit more than an encouragement, to use the customizer, and it never worked. It never took off. And it's kind of died a little bit of a death. There are still some plugins and some Premier themes that integrate with the customizer. Mm-hmm. But in general, there's a lot of plugins that kind of built their own interface on top of WordPress. And I understand why they do it, but it's a little bit unfortunate because you just end up with a load of slightly different interfaces.
Yeah. So I think if let's take kind of the retail analogy here. So if I'm a retailer, let's say I'm Nike, and Nike knows that, and most retailers know that are selling a specific product, that if they have a product that has the most variety, or a product line that has the most variety, they're going to attract the most customers structurally. That's just how it works. If they have good prices, high quality product, a differentiator is going to be that you have the most variety. Well, WordPress is the Nike, right? They let you customize endlessly. Well, there is no tool that exists, to my knowledge, that is a perfect front-end visual editor. And this is a problem that every, I'd say CMS, even Wix and some of these other sort of online tools are trying to solve for, to make it so that anybody can do it without code. Well, the reality is we have certain elements that even those tools have limitations doing, where you still have to go in and do customization. So I think that problem is going to be around basically forever, because there are just certain things where I have to write the code, write custom code, do some customization, no matter how small, to really fit exactly what it is I'm trying to present in the world. And why is that? Well, if you look at a business, if you look at a marketing presence, it's more art than architecture, and everybody's got a unique preference, and so it's gonna be endless. It's gonna be an endless battle. It's nature versus nurture, so to speak, I think. And why I ask that question, when try to get the best tool that fits for your business is ultimately, I think, a better approach.
Well, I'm respectful of your time. I think we end it here. Ian, I've been really impressed. You've dealt with my very interesting questions with great gas. You have to hopefully come back in sometime in the new year and be our guest again, because I really enjoyed our techno feast, and you've dealt with all my crazy questions really very easily. So thank you so much. Like I say, folks, we'll be back next week with hopefully my co-host, another great guest like Ian. It should be a great show. See you soon, folks. Bye.